to be noted, please. And a welcome to Andrew. Nice to have you with us. As usual, to be fair, as usual. Mind you, you didn't spend as much time with us on Zoom over lockdown. We spent a lot of time on Zoom. And I just wanted to note that it's the significance. I think the last time this committee met was the day the Prime Minister announced we were going into lockdown. And today the Prime Minister has announced we have no active cases. So we have bookended the crisis perfectly. And in fact, our tangata whenua would say that there is a process of closing things off poro aki, which is really important. So it's actually quite timely. I am going to, the minutes from the last meeting didn't discuss the idea of deputy chair. And I actually can't even remember exactly where the conversations happened or whether they happened in the committee, but it's not in the minutes from the last meeting. And I have been asked to chair the meeting, and I was wondering whether we could have a motion on the table to actually make an appointment of deputy chair, so that we're clear in our rules about who is going to chair the meeting. So is there someone who would like to move a nomination to be the deputy chair to take the meeting? Rex, did you put your hand up? Yeah.
I'll move that you are the deputy chair. And just to clarify it, I thought Rick was going to attend this meeting, so I didn't focus as well, but I think he's probably done his dash, hasn't he? And his term is over. We'll sack him now. He's done a wonderful job, probably give him the knighthood. And but he can move on to other greener pastures, and I'll take over again. Now that we don't have any more disasters, Ian. No more disasters, Ian.
Rex, I'm going to suggest that because Rick's not here, that we actually maybe just leave that with him just at the moment. If we just tidy up the deputy chair stuff, and then we can function today, and then we can sort out the chair and the roles for the next meeting. Is that okay?
It's okay, but I think we need to move on.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I just second the nomination.
Kapai, thank you, Sandra. So I've got to move in second to nominate, to confirm appointment of Mayor Alex Walker as deputy chair. Anyone else need to say anything?
No.
All those in favour, please say aye. I probably shouldn't have moved that, but anyway. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. That just tidies that up in our terms of reference as well. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly move to the minutes of the previous meeting from the 23rd of March. Is there any questions about those minutes?
Madam Chair, can we just move the apologies?
Yes, sure, Arnalee. I'll have a move from Mayor Little. Move the apologies. Craig? And seconded by Rex. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Questions about the minutes from the 23rd of March? That I need to stay. Okay, so we have that those minutes are a true and correct record. Moved by Rex, seconded, please. Kirsten? All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. We have two action items that had come from previous joint committee meetings, and the first one is about the objectives for the group plan, and pretty obviously noted by Ian there, no progress due to the situation we've been in for the last 9 weeks or however long it's been, and a risk reduction program with the TAs, which will come into the next meeting, and we need to pick up that letter about the adoption of our annual financial report. Ian, can you just draft that and circulate it, please?
Yes, so basically that's been to all of the councils now, the annual report.
Yeah.
I attended your council meeting where I think it was discussed. I've been to Napier City Council's meeting where it was discussed, and the Regional Council have been through it as well. So look, I'm happy to continue on with the letter if you like, but
It was to regional council. It was to regional councillors.
Yeah, it was too. Sorry. Yep. No, that's fine. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions about follow-up actions? No. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Ian.
Yep.
Annalie, do I have to do anything? No.
No, Madam Chair, sorry. Takes me a bit of time to get the microphone. That's fine.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is amendments to the group plan for controllers and recovery. Ian, do you want to briefly talk to this? Probably the replacement controllers thing is something we're familiar with, but perhaps your commentary or endorsement of the change would be helpful, and then commentary about the recovery status.
So with regards to Juanita Savage, she takes over from, or Waira are proposing that she takes over from Libby Young. Libby no longer works for the council. So look, I was able to observe her over this event. She was the acting controller for a while in Waira. She was competent and did a good job. So I'd recommend her to the committee. So with regards to the recovery manager, obviously for COVID-19, we don't yet have an appointed recovery manager for the region, and that's going through a process at the moment. As agreed, Mike Adey is our appointed recovery manager under the group plan, but obviously as agreed with him and discussed with the CEs, he won't carry out this role for COVID-19. In the interim, we have a national recovery notice with powers embedded within that, which we essentially don't have anybody to effectively administer or use. So after some discussion with the chair of the KEG, Monique, it was agreed that we should propose to appoint the group controller as an alternate recovery manager. And that just provides for the situation where we've got a little bit of a gap between the response and the national declaration or the national state of emergency being uplifted and the national recovery notice still being in place. I suspect, however, this might be a bit academic because the impression that I got is that as soon as we go to level 1, we're unlikely to have a recovery notice, but obviously that's up to government to decide that. The only other point is around the powers of controllers. So there was an audit done of all of our group plans when the national state of emergency was originally declared. They just pointed out that within our group plan, we hadn't specifically delegated the powers of the group to the controllers, albeit that it's covered under a number of other delegations anyway. So the only alteration really I'm proposing there is that paragraph 9.1.5 is we include section 85.1, which outlines the powers of the group and that they be delegated to the controllers, to the group controllers. So that's basically it.
Can I ask Andrew Hawke, can you just give us some guidance about the approach to the recovery manager?
Certainly, and I've had a couple of chats on this. So just to be aware of is, and a few groups are doing this because this is not a normal situation, and most recovery managers are dealing with damaged infrastructure, and so you're talking more of the built environment, and such. This is more of a infrastructure to the economy and social. So quite a few groups are thinking who they point in this role, someone who's more has an economic focus or someone who has economic and social focus. So if you appoint someone as a group recovery manager solely for COVID, the powers still sit with Mike Adey because you can only have one group recovery manager. So that's just something to be aware of. This might be a moot point today if they actually terminate the national transition period, which means you have no powers. But right now, the current authority sits with Mike Adey. They'll be rethinking anyhow about the national transition period, so it might be gone hopefully today, but we don't know yet. Can't preempt that decision. Just in the background, just for information, if you're not aware, is there is actually a public COVID Public Health Response Act, which has been passed Cabinet, And what that means is that in future, if there is any escalation in the COVID response required, that powers sit with effectively the enforcement agencies. So that's border, immigration and customs, and police for anything else for requirements of stopping people going places, stopping people gatherings, and those sort of things. So it might be a moot point from the point of view of the powers required, but it's still worthwhile having someone who is going to be responsible for overseeing what you're going to do in the recovery space from here. And it's going to be a long game, we know that. So it's a good idea to actually have someone who's going to be leading that. And around the country, it's variable, but you want that person to lead it or to coordinate it. Normally it's a coordination fact. You've got the specialist in economic space, you've got the specialists in the welfare space, wellbeing space. It's coordinating all that, make sure A is talking to B and that sort of thing. So those are all the things I would add, unless you've got anything else to ask questions on. Hope that helps.
No, that's good. Thank you. Just to be sure that we're consistent and with approaches elsewhere. Any questions about this paper? Rex?
I have a sort of statement question, really. I mean, you got that exactly right. That this is a unique situation with a pandemic. We didn't really, buildings haven't fallen down and a tsunami hasn't rushed through. Where a recovery manager, I can see they would have an absolute role. But I am really struggling to see how a recovery manager will have any impact in this situation. You'd have to have some seriously talented person to oversee, talented in more ways than one, to oversee the recovery plans of 5 different councils and Tangata Whenua, because they're all. This is free enterprise at work. Wairo's doing its own thing. Everyone's doing their own thing, and I just don't know how a person can impact on any of it. To be frank,
coordination, I think, is the objective. Rex.
Well, that will be interesting.
Okay.
I think it's an impossible task. You set yourself up for failure. Who's paying this person? The government?
No.
So, Alex, could I perhaps respond to Rex's question? So the current working assumption is that we're going to pay for it proportionally by the 5 participating councils through the normal share that we run our current shared service approach with, which is bigger proportions for Hastings, Napier and the region, and smaller proportions for Wairoa and CHB. Rex, you're quite right that we've got a high level of bottom-up activity happening all over the place. And so I think the idea here is to ensure that there's good visibility of the collective. We're ensuring that initiatives that could usefully be shared or joined up with other parties are brought to the surface, if you like, and those opportunities are identified. And if there are gaps that nobody's filling, we're also identifying those as well. So, look, it will be a case of kind of herding cats, but probably not a huge amount of herding, more observing. And so I think there is a potentially legitimate question about whether or not we are making a necessary investment here. But I think in terms of liaising with central government, what the 5 chief executives have discussed is we've got our own organisations to run. Responding to COVID, including around the recovery space, has been a disproportionately large burden on the 5 of us over the last couple of months. And we need somebody working with us and working with our leaders to ensure that whatever coordination we can achieve, we do. Our interactions with central government, the local business community, and with Tangata Whenua have a central point person who's bringing those relationships together. And so, yeah, we are proceeding with recruiting somebody here with a degree of ambiguity about how the role will play out, given we're in uncharted territory. But we think it's important to have somebody attempting to play this role than not have somebody at all. But we are keen to get guidance from the leaders on that question today. So if you've got views about how this role can work, we're all ears.
You need a really good person.
I think that pretty much sums it up. When you say approaching the recruitment with some level of ambiguity, that's a good way to describe it. And so that does mean you need the right person. Yeah. I see it was re-advertised last week.
Yeah, we weren't 100% thrilled with what we got through the door first time around, and we've decided that, you know, this all does stand or fall on the quality of the individual.
Yeah.
And so we've gone back to market and we're chasing a few leads, and we've got some other options that have come through over the weekend. So we're going to explore those too. Okay.
So in the interim, we need to deal with a paper on the table, which is about adding Ian as the alternate on the recovery managers, as an alternate recovery manager in the group plan, to make sure that we cover off our powers in there. But it does mean that when it comes to anything further, there will need to be the removal of Mike AD at some point, according to Andrew there, because we can't have more than one at a time to bring the new person in. But at the moment, we need to have an alternate with Ian on the list. Yeah. Okay, so we have recommendations here. The first one, that the committee agrees the decisions made are not significant under Significance Engagement Policy and Local Government Act. Number 2, that committee resolves to make minor amendment, which is adding Juanita Savage and removing Libby Young from the Hawke's Bay Local Controllers list, adding Ian McDonald as an alternate to the Hawke's Bay Group Recovery Managers list, amend the functions and powers delegated to the group controllers by adding section 86 of the Act to item 5 to read emergency powers, section 85(1), 86 to 92 and S94, and that the committee authorises Ian McDonald to act in the statutory role of Group Recovery Manager for the purpose of exercising the powers of the Notice of National Transition Period for COVID dated 13th of May 2020 and any subsequent extension, which may even be terminated possibly even today or Wednesday, so it could be academic. Can I have a mover for the recommendations, please?
Happy to move.
Thank you, Sandra, and seconded Craig. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. And looking forward to seeing the result of the recruitment in that space. Item 7 is financial and results-based accountability. Pretty well described about the finances, but would you like to speak to that, Ian?
Yeah, just briefly, and then I'll let Alison talk to the results-based accountability report. So I just want to re-emphasise, this is an interim financial report. There's a number of costs still coming in and claims still to be made. And look, we received a bill for $100,000 on Friday, for example. So that's the sort of thing that's coming in still. That is claimable, though, thankfully. So look, we've put an initial claim in for about $520,000. That's been lodged. We're yet to see any parts of that will be rejected or not. Definitely during this response, there are 2 types of costs. There are the operational response costs, which are things like our 0800 number, some of the additional staff that we had to contract in, etc. So those are costs that we cannot claim for. And then there's the emergency welfare costs, which are things like the support we gave to food banks, our own food parcels that we distributed, etc., etc. In the report, I factored in that we should be reimbursed for those costs. So that's factored into the figures. So essentially, if you go to paragraph 12 of the report, that's really just the nexus of the whole thing, which is that we currently have about $562,000 worth of unbudgeted expenditure as a result of this response. 340,000 of that can be covered by the existing CDEM reserves. The remainder of about 220,000 at the moment, and I just re-emphasise that it's just at the moment, can be addressed either through increasing the regional CDEM targeted rate or borrowing against the reserves, which is essentially, I suppose, going into a negative situation. I've just had some discussions with Jess Alern, who's the finance manager here, and she's going to think about it. But it would be really useful if we got an understanding from the committee what your thoughts were, because obviously we're going to have to, at some stage, go to the Regional Council with some recommendations from this committee as how do you want to deal with that. So that's it in terms of the financial. It might pay if you've got questions, Madam Chair, that you ask them about the financial now before we pass on to Alison.
Good idea. Any questions about the financial information that's there? $220,000 if that was a change to the targeted rate.
Yep. So
would be how many dollars? Well, because we've got 80,000 ratepayers.
Yeah, that's right. So just divide it up. So that's around about $4, I think. But it's going to be more than 220,000, I think, by the time we finish. We've also got drought costs, which are starting to build as well. So we're supporting the Royal Advisory Group in their response. So that's going to be probably, by the end of the year. I'm thinking it'll be in the sort of the around the $100,000 mark in additional expenditure. So yeah, so look, for every sort of as you say, $70,000 to $80,000, that's a $1 increase in the regional rate.
Okay, James.
Just also, I guess, to note that's a little bit over a 1% increase on the Regional Council's general rates take. And we'll be looking, in all likelihood, to be taking a proposal on the long-term plan to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council for an increase in the civil defence rate, not only to cover this issue, but just an increase in costs that is arising at this point in time. It's just one of many cost pressures that the Regional Council has. Other member councils of this committee will be confronting in the LTP.
Everything's going up. Rex?
Jane, just on that, we just need to clearly itemise it. I mean, everyone recognises our civil defence team have done this incredible job. And I just want to acknowledge you, Ian. You've done a phenomenal job out there. And, just going to have to accept it. If they want a really top job, it's just going to cost a bit more. But so we do itemise it on the rate form, don't we? Civil defence.
Yes.
Targeted rate.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 It's just a back to life, and get these things happen.
Alex?
Yes, Sandra?
I totally agree with what Rex has just said, and I think that it's really, and I also congratulate you and your team. And, in the scheme of things, what you guys have delivered and a cost over and above 220,000 is absolutely nothing. But what it's highlighted to me is that actually there wasn't sufficient in the pool to start with. So, if we had tsunami, earthquake or another civil defence emergency, we would need a whole lot more than that. And I think that it would be very good to, if the team could get out a bit of a story about the costs, Ian, just so the community knows, that in the scheme of things, what we delivered and what it cost, and I think it's really important to sort of share that information with our community.
Yeah.
Yes, Ian.
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to thank you for your congratulations. But I think the team did a great job, and I think I'd really want to emphasise that. And Alison's online, and she did a great job. So as the welfare manager, so I think I just want to acknowledge that. Sorry, yeah.
Chair,
Rex, yes.
The point is, Sandra's right. The job that was done, whoever did it, was well done for this cost. It's not huge cost.
No.
We got Rick for free. That was good.
Okay, so I think the feedback is that there is value in the work that's been done, and so we shouldn't be ashamed of naming that, and also potentially asking our ratepayers to contribute to some increased costs in this space because of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we need to see the options come back to us when we're more certain, obviously, so we can make a recommendation through the Regional Council.
Chair, that point that we need to do a public relations exercise on that is real, though. We need to somehow we need to tell whether it's a talking point from Ian or just something. Hey, it's all over. A big job was done by a whole lot of people, and it cost us much. I think they're going to be shocked. They're probably thinking millions.
Yeah, absolutely thinking millions.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of what happened was a lot of people on the ground, a lot of goodwill in their jobs going above and beyond or volunteering. And that's actually what got us through. It was community.
We could say there's lots of volunteers.
Yeah. Right. So speaking of community action and volunteers and networks and all of that good stuff that made the magic on the ground, Alison, you're going to speak to us about your non-financial summary, which is amazing, by the way. Thank you. It's really amazing to collect that kind of information.
Kia ora tātou. So yeah, this is the first time that we've done results-based accountability of a response that we've been involved in. The first time we've truly measured the quality and the outcome. So this is in effect the return on the investment that you have made into civil defence. So just wanted to give you a wee bit of context to talk to what has underpinned this, and it is the contribution of a whole bunch of people. The Te He Māori Ora response has been exceptional. The Network of Networks response has been exceptional, and they all worked in a coordinated way with the official response that we've delivered. The results in this report focus on the kind of 0800 number, the end-to-end service delivery, but obviously that's only a small part of the story. That work has largely been underpinned by the efforts of our fast-moving consumer goods team, who have led nationally and been ahead of the game. Also by a really strong logistics team, and then of course a welfare team, particularly needs assessors. So a number of them came from the development hub, but a large number came from the different councils who contributed people. We're doing some debriefs with them over the next week to make sure that they are well cared for exiting this. The work that they did was phenomenal. They worked in isolated conditions with new technology, answering, I think we've got over 6,000 calls of sometimes very distressing nature, sometimes of abusive nature, and they acted with total professionalism, which you will see from the results of our survey. So I think they should be really celebrated. And I guess the story that isn't told in this document is that the work that was collectively done enabled us to scale up. So luckily we didn't get full community transmission, but we would have been able to scale up significantly with the model that we had collectively developed. So that's the good story. So the only other thing, the only page I'm going to really draw your attention to, I think, in your papers is page 39. Which talks about the outcome, and it talks to, so we asked the people that we went back and surveyed. We were hoping to survey 10%, but we just ran out of time, but 6% was reasonable, and the results were fairly consistent. The fact that we had a percentage that identified they would have coped was good, because it meant that we weren't, making it too hard to access our service. And I think the public information team did a really good job at balancing that message of when do you need to reach out to us. But it's not so high that I would be concerned that we've over-delivered. I think the real thing for me is 85% of people we surveyed, lives were made better because of the response. And I think of note, it's the 15% of people who would have been in crisis. These are people who really would have fallen through the gaps. So I believe we met the objectives of the response. I think we've learnt a tremendous amount from this response, and a lot of that can help build our capability into the future. And sure, there's a bunch of stuff we would have done better. So I just really open up to any questions which I can hopefully answer.
Thank you, Alison. And those measures there are really telling, actually, about the number of people that would not have coped, and picking up those that fall in between the cracks. Any questions from the committee? Sandra? You're on mute, Sandra. Can we unmute you?
Sorry, just talking to my chief executive sitting alongside me here. So just in terms of, and thank you, Alison, thank you for your report and thank you for all your hard work. Can I just also take the opportunity really to, a lot of our community want to have a thank you to civil defence and essential workers. So, you know, how we approach that, and I mean, I've had community come forward and saying, can we have a concert in the Opera House, you know, at level 1, and all sorts of great ideas. So I guess, you know, we're not going to run off and do anything on our own, and thinking about, you know, what this could look like. Ian, Alison, how you best see this thank you to happen. But I know that, and even our school children have asked if they could have a thank you to our essential workers and our civil defence teams. So, yeah, be just interested to hear your views on that. I mean, we don't just have a Hastings one. If you want to take a different approach, you know, but, you know, it's probably enough people in Hastings to thank when you think of how many phone calls, and enough in Napier, enough in Central and Whitehall. So, Ian,
has there been any thinking?
There's been a little bit of thinking, but only to do with thanking people who are sort of directly involved with the response at this stage from us. I just want to say that we're still dealing with quite a few residual issues. For example, we've got 2,500 foreign nationals here still stuck in Hawke's Bay who aren't getting any support from the government, that we are still dealing with in terms of the civil defence response.
Yeah.
And then also we've got the drought as well, which has sucked in all of my staff really in the last week, and it will do this week as well. So I know that you want to thank people, but I'm also just tempering that by saying we're still sort of involved in our response. So look, I really I don't know whether I can. It's very hard because it's a regional sort of organisation, and trying to actually be fair across all of the councils, as you point out, is really hard. So I don't know how we do that, and I'm really in your hands actually, to be honest. I don't know whether I can give you any advice as to how you want to thank us. Look, if it means that we do it piecemeal, council by council, and some of the staff go to each one, and you thank your people who are directly involved from your end, that would be fine, I think. And that means we can cover off all of the councils, because I think it's important that we go to Wairau and Central Hawke's Bay as well, rather than just having it centrally somewhere. So that's just my advice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good.
Sandra, part of our thinking is that when you start saying thank you to people, it's really easy to miss. And so we're taking an approach to try, what I would like to do is take an approach to try and align with Volunteer Week, which is in the last week of June, where we give people the opportunity to nominate those people that have volunteered to help them. So we know some volunteers that did work, but there are also those people that were probably heroes in their own little part of the community. So how can we put it out there to our community to say, actually, tell us all of the people that did magic things for you, that were champions for you, so that we can make sure we spread that net in the first instance. In terms of how to have some kind of public functions, I think would be sensible, if we're going to do things like that, to do it in communities, rather than too joined up, because it just gets too big, would be my feeling. And so that's what I'd like to see, is to put some of that power back in our community's hands, to say, actually, who are the champions that made a difference for you, so that we can make sure we can pick up as many people as possible. Yeah, so we've got Civic Honours and Hastings Heroes coming in for that. I guess this is just a wider, and that does include civil defence, or so we'll have that's a good idea though. Volunteer Week, that's a really good idea, but I think it's probably bringing all the organisations in into functions on Hastings, some of the key network of networks. Potentially, yes. So that's probably what I'm thinking about. Just, haven't given any thought until now, but I think that's probably, Ian and Alison, probably what we would do. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we, should we pick that up at Mayoral Forum, Sandra?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Nigel?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I think there's some minutes of Rick Barker saying that Rex was going to be hosting and paying for the regional leaders celebration at some point as well that we haven't forgotten about.
Yeah. He did say it. I don't know whether it got on the minutes, but he did say it. He loves to volunteer me for these things.
Good. So is there any more, just coming back to Alison's report. So what we've got with the financial and non-financial is that we're just noting that information at the moment. It's where we've landed now, but obviously as we get through to the end of the financial year, things will change in this at the moment. So it's just noting this report. Is there anything further actions or questions to come from that, James?
Just picking up on Rex's comment earlier on, I'm wondering, there's some really interesting stats in Alison's report, which I think nicely complement the financial picture. And I'm just wondering whether, following this meeting, if we could draft a media statement as a bit of an update on the CDEM response. I think it'll get good pickup. And,
yes.
Yeah, this report reads really well.
Yeah.
And you know, if you could get out the salient points, and some of those, you wouldn't get all those case studies out, but I mean, yeah, as much as you can out to the public. They'd be really interested in this.
Yes, they would.
The public would like to read this report.
I think it's important. I think it's important when we do that to provide some context of what civil defence had their hands on compared to what our network of network had their hands on, because it naturally exponentially grows when you look at what happened further down the network. So I agree, there's a great story here. We've just got to make sure we get some good context for our community.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I think that's a good action for some comms around that.
Yep, we can do that. Yep.
Yeah, COVID free. Yeah, Liz, I like Liz's comment. I think that's absolutely relevant. That, you know, that COVID free, get that press release out. That's thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, no other questions. Then I will ask for a mover of recommendation that the committee receives and notes the financial and results-based accountability report for the COVID-19 response. And I'll have a move from Craig and a second from Kirsten. Anyone would like to speak? No. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. No further items of business. Andrew, Mr. McDem, is there anything that you would like to raise? No, it's not even McDem anymore, is it?
No, nothing from me. No, NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency now. So, no, nothing from me. Unless any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, anything else from the committee? Otherwise, thank you all for your dedication to our civil defence group, which has extended for a number of weeks now, and the attention that everybody has paid to making sure this was about the preparedness and the recovery of our region. It wasn't just about health, it wasn't just about civil defence, it was about our communities and everybody being there together. And thank you all very much for that. Was a very amazing time for building relationships and resilience. And on that note,
Alex,
I'm going to close the meeting because I'm going to zip off to a national meeting now. So I will close the meeting and say goodbye.
So goodbye, but just before you go, thank you very much, Chair, and good luck with the next meeting. Great to have you there representing us. But just, you know, we left that last meeting with Chairman Rick, and we said, you know, there may or may not be a barbecue at Rex's, but I would like to formally thank him, and I'd like it minuted, please, that we thank him for his hard work and dedication through the COVID crisis. And I think that it is absolutely important that we, you know, as a group, as CDEM Group, thank him for his leadership. Thank you.
Absolutely, totally agree, Sandra.
Cool.
We'll make that. So formally noted in the minutes, please,
yes.
Annalise.
Thank you.
But we will also make sure we reach out on behalf of the mayors to him as well.
And his and in the press release, if he could please be acknowledged.
Yep. Good idea. Okay. Ka kite.
Ka kite.